Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy two. That's just $60 a month for two unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Hey there. Looking to level up your shopping experience? Let me introduce you to Amazon Live. If you haven't heard, it's a shoppable video experience where influencers and creators showcase the latest must-haves, all while you shop in real time. And for those who love some celeb gossip, reality stars like Kyle Richards, Lala Kent, and friend of the pod, Paige DeSorbo. On her new show, In Bed with Paige DeSorbo, Paige invites top-tier guests to cozy up in her fluffy bed where they spill secrets, share nighttime routines, and even whip up midnight snacks. Stream and shop new episodes of her series In Bed with Paige DeSorbo every Tuesday at 7 p.m. ET by going to amazon.com/live/Paige_DeSorbo. Or you can watch Amazon Live's new live TV channel on Freevee or Prime Video under the DIY section and shop along on your phone.
Welcome to 31 Days of Terror, day number 12. And in today's episode, I am joined by the wonderful William C. Graves, who was the author of the book The Lady in the Bay Window. I covered this story in episode 242, and it was released on August the 18th of this year. William's book, The Lady in the Bay Window, is available now on Amazon, and all the proceeds for this book go to charity. The link to purchase this book is in the description, and this episode was recorded remotely, so the sound quality may be slightly different than usual. I am joined in the virtual studio by the wonderful William C. Graves. William C. Graves, how are you? Can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? Why are you here?
Hi, Emma. My actual name's Liam. William C. Graves is actually a pseudonym. I'm here because I've written a story about my house that I've lived in, my haunted house that I've been here for nearly 20 years now. I released the book last October the 31st of all days, not because it was Halloween, more so because I'd just finished it and it was payday and I thought I'd probably sell a few more copies on that day, but it coincided with Halloween. So I've sold about 8,000 copies of this book now. Didn't think it was going to be that big, but people like the paranormal. And like to hear about true stories of the paranormal. And it's all to raise money for a local cancer charity who helped my late mom.
I'm going to go off-piste slightly.
Well, that's fine.
Immediately going off-piste.
Was
it a shock when you realised how much it was selling?
Oh, it's crazy. So I spoke with the cancer charity. So before my mom passed, she passed a year last May. And the book was launched, as I say, in October. I'd actually finished I was just about to finish the final draft of the book. And I spoke with my mum and said, look, I want to give all the money to a charity that's looked after you. And I spoke with the charity for the first time. It's a charity called Cavendish Cancer Care, who are brilliant, by the way, for anyone who's got cancer sufferers in their family or suffered themselves. They're absolutely fantastic at supporting people. When I spoke to them, I said, they must have thought I was a bit nuts at first. I said, I've written a book about my home that's haunted. I'm a bit of a skeptic myself. However, I've seen things, heard things, and there's lots of stories from friends and family of things that have happened to them and apparitions that they've seen. So that was the first conversation with them. And they said, how many books do you think it'll sell? How much do you think it'll raise for us? And I said, well, probably if I sell it to friends and family and people they know, it'll probably make about £2,500 for you. And it's just about to tip over £33,000 nearly a year down the line. So it's gone a little bit bigger than I thought it would. But I'm kind of glad I changed all the names and the address and wrote under a pseudonym, because it would have been a bit of a circus if not at my home that I still live in.
Yeah, and you still live in it, right? It's all well and good if you're writing about somewhere that is, it's been knocked down or it's not there anymore, but you still have to live in this house.
I do, yeah. I'm actually in the house now, so I'm in my office, which is my stepson's bedroom when he's here. He's at university, but I've turned it into a bit of an office now. So if anything happens in the background while we're talking, that's it's not me, but I'm hoping it doesn't.
I can guarantee you that every single listener right now is thinking, I really hope something happens.
Yeah. I'll be looking over my shoulder now.
So before we get into the nitty gritty, right? And this story is great. And I was so glad when I reached out to you and you were like, absolutely, like tell the story on the podcast. And I left a lot of it out because I didn't want to include everything, because then what's the point of anybody buying the book, right? So I left swathes of the story out. Before we get into it,
yes,
what is your favorite horror film and why?
Good question. So my favorite horror film is The Conjuring 2. Purely, if you've seen this film, it's about the Enfield house. It bears a lot of resemblances to what I've been living through for the last 20 years. I've not seen if you've seen the film, I've not seen an old man sat in a chair as I've walked downstairs, although there has been an old lady seen by 4 different people on 5 different occasions. So it bears a lot of resemblances to what I'm going through. And I did actually have something paranormal happen on the night that I watched the film. So, I saw a shadow figure go underneath the doorway as I was renovating the house at the time. And it's in the book. So if anyone reads the book, you will read that passage of what happened that night. But it creeped me out, and I couldn't actually watch the end of the film. And I'm not normally a scared person. I'm quite a skeptic. I'm an open-minded skeptic now because I've seen and heard things in the house that shouldn't happen, paranormal things. But yeah, that's my favorite horror film.
I love that you went from I'm a skeptic to an open-minded skeptic, despite the fact you live in a haunted house. You're not even like, I'm a believer.
Yeah, I think it would. I've seen spring-loaded door handles. I've seen them turn and doors open with nobody on the other side. And if anybody, I'm a logical person. I work in a very professional job, and it took a lot for me to put this book out there because I didn't want people to think I was absolutely nuts. But I've seen these things happen. We've heard voices in the house. There's multiple witnesses on many occasions that have seen things and heard things and footsteps and all sorts of stuff. But the door handle, when I first saw that happen, just really took me aback, because that cannot logically happen with nobody on the other side of the door to exert any force on it. So if anybody can explain that to me that is a full-blown skeptic, then please do, because I'd like an explanation to that.
Have you found that, because I always find with people who are super skeptical, like I would describe myself as an open-minded skeptic, but there are some people who are like super, super skeptical, and the mental gymnastics they go to try and debunk things, I love it. I find it really hilarious sometimes. I'm like, really, that's what you think happened? Well, have you had people that have like really tried to debunk the stuff that's happened in your house?
Massively. And I've got a good friend of mine who, at the time, I just met him that week. I just started to work as his boss. And we'd been out for a drink. This part's in the book as well, to be fair. We'd been out for a drink, and I ended up with 3 of them back at my house for a bit of an after drink and a game of darts in the kitchen. It was a bit of a lad pad back before I was married and had a little one. And when they came back, I told them about the house is haunted. And one of them just kind of laughed, and he was a full-blown skeptic and said, yeah, whatever. And something happened to him that night. And he was the first one to go and investigate. It was footsteps upstairs. He went to investigate, and he came running back downstairs like a baby elephant. He was like, ran into the room saying, there's something up there. You're winding it. There must be somebody up there. And I was like, no, there's nobody else in the house. This happens quite a bit. But yeah, he now he's like me. He's an open-minded skeptic. He knows something went on that night, but he couldn't explain it. And he was a full-blown skeptic.
So for those who don't know, maybe people haven't listened to the episode, or maybe people haven't read the book, could you tell us a little bit about your story of The Lady in the Bay Window?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah. So it all started back in November 2004. I was looking for my first house. I was 19 years old at the time, looking for my first house with my fiance at the time. And we found a property. Unfortunately, it fell through about a week before we were due to move in. And then, as fate would have it, a property came on the market in the same area the next day. And my fiance said, we should go and look at it. Let's go and check it out. we ended up getting the house. It's a 3-bed semi-detached house. There's nothing massively special about it. I mean, I love the house. I've been here nearly 20 years now and moved on from that relationship, moved here pretty much 20 years to the day. And the first week before I moved in, about a week before I moved in, I was going on a night out. And at this point, I am, as you've just described, a full-blown skeptic. I don't believe in anything paranormal because nothing's ever happened to me. Nothing's ever made me want to believe or have to believe in it. But I drove down, a friend of mine picked me up to take me out that night. I was living at my mum and dad's, and he said, "You've bought a house, haven't you, around here?" I said, "Yeah, it's just around the corner." And he drove down the road and he said, "Let's go and take a look at it." And as he pulled down the hill, he pulled up on the left-hand side of the road, and I'm in the passenger seat. And I said, "It's that one there, buddy. Have a look from the outside." And he looked up at the house. This was a cold, dark December night. There was a few street lights on, so you could kind of just about see the house. And it was high up, risen off the roadside. It's up a bit of a steep path to get to the front of the property. But as we parked up on the curb and he looked up, he sort of leant across and looked up at the house. And he sort of sat back pretty quick and looked at me and said, "Looks a nice house, but who's the lady in the bay window?" And I knew that the house had been empty for the past 6 months. I'd been to view the house. There were no furniture in there. There's no carpets. There were radiators missing. It'd been sort of decorated in very neutral colours on the inside, but it needed a lot of work doing building work on the outside of the house before it was kind of livable. And this was sort of 7-8 o'clock at night one evening. So he's saying there's an old lady looking out the window. I looked up at the house. He then looked up again and pointed and said, "It is that one there, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's number 333. That's not the real number, by the way. And I said, "Yeah, I'm looking at the same house as you. What old lady?" And he said, "The old lady that's looking at us." And he sort of sat back again as if he shouldn't be looking at her. This went on for a couple of minutes, and eventually he drove off down the road and shrugged his shoulders. And I turned round, and I was kind of inquisitive as a 19-year-old and just said, "Come on then, tell me about this old lady. What did she look like?" Just thinking he was winding me up, taking the mickey out of me. He said she was probably in her 80s. She had grey permed hair. She had a dark cardigan, a white blouse. She was stood with her arms leaning on the top bay window, which is the master bedroom, as I come to know now. And she had a very piercing stare. And she was looking at us like she didn't want us outside the house. Now, there weren't even any curtains up in the house, and I couldn't see this old lady at the time. But that was the first sighting of the lady we came to know as Mrs. Tompkins, who we believe is the previous owner of the house. This went on and has been going on since.
So before we get into some of the other stuff that has happened in the house, there have been other instances of people seeing Mrs. Tompkins, but you not being able to see her.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea as to, or any like theory as to why you can't see her, but other people who are beside you, who are in your vicinity saying, "Look, she's there," why can't you see her?
I genuinely don't know. As I mentioned, there's been 4 different people that have seen the same old lady, described her exactly the same way, but they don't know each other. Or they didn't know each other at the time of the sightings. They didn't know each other to be able to corroborate any stories between themselves. I've been there on 3 of the occasions, looking in the same direction, twice in the bay window, one of which is with my wife when we were on it was one of the first times she came back to my house. Which you can imagine was a little bit creepy for her and for me, to be fair, because she was kind of saying, "Is that your nan? Is your nan round at the house?" And I'm looking at the window and seeing nothing. And the other time was on the first night in the house. My friend Greg was sat there. There were 6 of us in the room, and he looked over his shoulder and saw an old lady sat on an invisible chair in the front room. And he described her exactly the same. He's a big guy. You wouldn't mess with him. I've known him since I was 11 years old. He's got no reason to lie to me. He didn't know the guy from my work that had seen the old lady in the bay window the week before. And he described an old lady exactly the same clothing, even down to the clothing and the piercing stare. He was bang on point with it. And that's the first time I kind of looked at it and thought, am I in a haunted house here? Have I bought a house that's haunted or something's untoward?
I wondered when I was reading the book, and some listeners have pointed out as well, whether because you had bought the house, that she was somehow aware that you were going to be the one to own the house and look after the house that she obviously had lived in and loved. And whether or not these new people that were coming in, like your lad friends, this new partner, etc., whether she was being like, right, this isn't yours.
Yeah, I get
Just
that.
warning you now.
A lot of people have said that. I suppose it's something I'll potentially never know. But yeah, I genuinely hope, I sit here in front of you now, and I genuinely hope I see her one day, which people might think is absolutely mad. What are you doing living there and thinking you want to see this old lady? Because so many other people have seen her, I kind of want to see her as well.
I think in a way I would feel the same. I think I'd be like, I want to know what it is that everybody else is seeing. Like, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere. I want to know what it is. So the next question actually comes in from a listener, and they wanted to know, does the adjoining house ever see or hear anything, or people across the street, any neighbors, have they ever experienced anything?
So the adjoining house, it is a semi-detached house, as I mentioned before. They haven't. One of the sightings of the old lady was by my brother, who, another big guy, he's about 6'2", about 20 stone of muscle with tattoos. It's pretty much one big tattoo. Again, you wouldn't mess with him, but he was petrified into the state of being in a ball in the kitchen, not being able to speak when he saw her. But she walked through the wall into the adjoining property, into their extension when he saw her. And he described her exactly the same as well. Now, next door neighbours, I've spoken with them. I've probably, in the last 20 years, I bet I've had probably 5 different neighbours next door, none of which have ever mentioned anything. And it's not the sort of thing I want to go and speak with them about and ask the question, I suppose. I've asked the current occupiers now because they've read the book, and they've said they've not had anything, not seen anything, heard anything. However, since I launched the book, a guy wrote to me on Facebook who lived across the road with his elderly mother, who was friends with Mrs. Tompkins. And he was in his 40s. This only came to fruition about 2 months ago. So he lived there until he was in his 40s. And he saw Mrs. Tompkins about a week after she'd passed in the bay window. They lived bang across the road. And he's also come forward to say, since he's read the book and shared it with a few friends, one of his friends has also said, and not wanted to come forward before, but said, I also saw Mrs. Tompkins when I pulled up outside your house once, but didn't want to say anything for fear of feeling stupid because I knew she'd passed. So these are 2 people that I don't know. I am going to interview him for potentially a second book because I think it's really interesting that I don't know him and he's coming forward and giving me this information.
I think that's such an important thing about ghost stories and people coming out and saying, look, weird things are happening in my house. I don't know if it's paranormal, but I need to say something about it, because it gives other people an opportunity to talk about something they've experienced without having to feel stupid and without having to feel like, oh, people are going to laugh at me if I talk about this. Yeah,
definitely. Like I say, it took a lot for me to put the book out there because I was kind of scared of what people would think. You're writing about something that it's stuff that nobody knows how it happens, why it happens. Yes, they're experts in the field, but does anybody truly know what's actually going on?
Another question from a listener. Yes. Have you ever gotten any photos of the lady? And I suppose you could extend that to like any kind of photo evidence in any paranormal context of this woman.
Yeah, not of the lady. There is a story in the book of a photo I took on an old Panasonic flip phone. I actually moved out of the house for about 8 months. I lost my best friend when I was 23. He was 22. My brother was getting married and he needed a bigger place at the time. So I rented my property to him and I moved back into my mum and dad's for a little while. And when I came back, on the day I came back after 8 months of not being in the property, I walked back in and felt and you often feel this in the house, when something's going to happen, you feel like it's hard to describe, like an intense feeling, like a presence sort of feel, like somebody else is in the room with you, staring at you, looking at you, or stood behind you. It's quite a weird feeling. And I could feel that. And I sat down, and I'm quite used to that. I'm quite relaxed about it. And I sat down, and for the first time ever living in the house, spoke out. At the time, I'd lived in the house for about 4 years at the time. And I just said, I'm hoping this is my friend Dan, but I can feel somebody's in the room with me. If you are here, I'm going to take a photo on of a little Panasonic flip phone, as it was back then. If you're here, can you show yourself in front of the camera? And I first looked at the photo and didn't see anything. I was a bit disappointed. And then as I zoomed in, it was buttons on those photos. It wasn't like a touch screen or anything. It was buttons on the phone. And I sort of zoomed into this pixelated photo, and I could see like a dark, tall. It was a person. You could see an outline of a clear person stood next to where I was sat on the sofa, and it was reflecting in the TV screen. So you couldn't see it actually on the image, but you could see this tall, dark mass of a figure stood next to me. But it didn't look like an old lady sort of figure. This looked like a 6 foot, 7 foot big black mass stood sort of like posing for the picture. It's a really weird thing. And I showed this to friends, family at the time. And I don't have this photo. I didn't realize I was going to be writing a book about this sort of another 16, 17 years down the line. I don't still have this photo. It's just on that phone, which is frustrating. But I've caught things on CCTV, little things on CCTV, and there's a few videos on my Facebook page, The Lady in the Bay Window, which show the other time I tried to communicate with the spirit in the house, and we heard some loud thuds that sort of came back to us when there's only my wife and myself in the house, which was terrifying for her, but really interesting for me. She doesn't like that sort of stuff.
And I guess, it's like you said, you've been living in this house for 20 years. You're not going anywhere. Yeah. You want to know. You want to know.
Yeah.
You want to see this woman. You want to be able to communicate with her. And you don't, because I remember reading that bit in the book, the bit where you took the picture, and I really could feel your pain, that feeling of I want to connect with my friend. How do you cope with that loss? That grief is enormous.
Yeah.
But it really did send a shiver down my spine when you zoomed in on the picture and you were like, there was a black mass standing next to you.
Well, I've never felt like I needed to leave the house, and I did. At that point, I left the house and drove to my mum and dad's house, partly to show them the picture, but partly because I didn't want to be in the house on my own. I genuinely felt a fear, like shivers running down your spine as to, I need to get out of this house now.
So did you feel like that was something else?
Yeah, that didn't feel like the old lady. The old lady presence, to be fair, this feels like I'm sat here now. It's my home. I've been here 20 years. It feels like my home. It's a family home. That day, it didn't so much feel like a family home. It felt like I need to get out of here now. So
that's really interesting. And I this next question is actually from me, because it was one of the bits about the book that fascinated me the most. So in the book, you find American coins, and one of them at one point is hits you in the leg, and they disappear and they move around the house, and then isn't there a point where you think it's the same coin and you realize that it's actually a different coin?
It was. Yeah, I think in a quick way of explaining that story, I found a coin on a Friday night. I found a 1 cent coin on the stairs, and I took it on the first night, I found it on the bedroom floor. On the Friday night, I found it on the bedroom floor in the middle of the floor, picked it up. It said 2014 on it, and it was an American 1 cent coin. And I thought, what is that doing here? And so I looked at my wife, who was in bed at the time, and said, why is that here? I put it in my bedside table, didn't think much of it. The Saturday night came along, similar sort of thing. I went to bed about half an hour after my wife. As I walked in the bedroom, same spot on the carpet. There's nothing else on the floor. There's a 1 cent American coin. I picked it up. I looked at the date, at the same date, so I assume it's the same coin. I looked in my top drawer. There's no other coins in there. It's a sock drawer, to be fair, so there's no other coins in there. There's no coin in there. So I assume this is the same coin. I spoke to my wife. I actually woke her up at the time and said, why is this here? She didn't know. The third night, so on the Sunday night, I'd hoovered all the house. I'm walking up the stairs. I find an American 1 cent coin in the middle of the stairs. And I walked into the bedroom and said, you must be winding me up. And she's not the sort of, like I say, this sort of paranormal stuff really freaks her out. She doesn't like it at all. She could move tomorrow. She would. But she just said, give it here. Give me the coin. I don't know why it keeps appearing, but I'll put it on my bedside table. The next morning on the Monday, the coin got thrown at me in the shower. I was in the shower on my own. The coin hit me on the back of the leg at some force as well. It made a slapping noise as it hit me, but I knew what it was going to be before I looked down. The relevance of these coins, and the story gets weirder from there, but it's a long story, but I'll let you read that in the book. But the relevance of them, I have no idea. But the only thing, I went on Google like probably anybody else would and said, why am I finding 1 cent American coins in my home in the UK? And the general consensus was that somebody from America's coming to visit you. It's a spiritual thing. Somebody from America's coming to visit you. And the weird thing was that a week later, my friend was coming back he lives in Santa Monica, and he used to live here. He lived in this house for 4 years, renting a room here, this room that I'm in, actually. And he was coming back the week later with his new girlfriend to stop with us. So that was, whether it's a massive coincidence, but how do these coins keep reappearing? And the one that was thrown at me in the shower was really compelling for me because there was nobody else in the room. I was the only one in the room at the time, and it hit me on the back of the leg. And then for a friend to come forward and say that he found a 1 cent American coin in his pocket on the Sunday, the last day that I found a coin, he'd gone home from my house and found an American 1 cent coin in his pocket and not said anything about it until I told him this story a week later. So,
because of course he'd be thinking, "Oh, this is just a weird thing," but you wouldn't be immediately thinking, "I'm going to tell everybody."
No, exactly. So when I told him this story, he'd actually asked me if anything weird or paranormal had happened in the house lately, because he used to live here as well. A lot of people, if you've read the book, I lived on my own for quite a while, and family and friends used to rent the 2 spare rooms just to help with the bills, but also to keep me company. It was good fun having him here. But yeah, he'd come around to do some work for me, and he went white when I told him this story and said, "When was it that this happened?" I said, "Yeah, it was last Friday, Saturday, Sunday." And he said, "I was here on the Sunday, wasn't I?" I was like, "Yep." That's when I found the coin in my pocket. And I've now there were actually 3 coins in the end. I've got all 3 coins here, stored in a jar downstairs. They're all together.
I always just wonder where do they physically come from? Like,
I have no idea.
Do they just materialize? It's so bizarre. And it's just reminded me of like one of the stories in your book. And sorry, this isn't on the list of questions, but I'm just going to go rogue again.
Code Red, your monthly visitor. Whatever you call it, there's only one name you need to know when it comes to managing your period in comfort and style. Say hello to Knix. That's KNIX, the #1 leak-proof brand in North America. Knix has revolutionized the period underwear game with their incredible line of leak-proof undies designed for real bodies. From sizes extra small to 4XL. With Knix, you get underwear that look, feel, and machine wash just like regular underwear, but feature hidden protection technology that can absorb from 1 to 14 regular tampons worth of liquid. So you feel dry, comfy, and free. Millions have already made the switch to Knix, and now you can too. Just go to Knix.com and get 15% off with promo code SHOP15. That's KNIX.com, promo code SHOP15 for 15% off life-changing period underwear. That's KNIX.com, promo code SHOP15.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions, and the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com.
Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Need new glasses or want a fresh new style? Warby Parker has you covered. Glasses start at just $95, including anti-reflective, scratch-resistant prescription lenses that block 100% of UV rays. Every frame's designed in-house with a huge selection of styles for every face shape. And with Warby Parker's free home try-on program, you can order 5 pairs to try at home for free. Shipping is free both ways, too. Go to warbyparker.com/covered to try 5 pairs of frames at home for free. warbyparker.com/covered.
One of the stories in your book is so different to the others, in that, like the picture of the shadow where you said it didn't feel like the old lady. The moment where you had a roommate and you had been drinking, both of you, like you'd all been drinking the next morning, and you wake up and there's knives in the floor.
Yes, that was a little bit threatening.
That felt different.
I didn't sleep for a long time after that. To walk downstairs into your front room and see 5 knives stuck in the oak floorboards, they were in size order, they were pretty evenly spaced between them, but they were 2 inches buried into oak floorboards. Now, oak's quite a dense material.
Yeah.
To be able to put a knife 2 inches into it, you're not doing that by hand. These are cooking knives, they're sharp knives, and they're all ranging from sort of 4 to 8 inches large, I'd say. But to do that takes some force. And I can't, and I've actually written in the book, I can't say this is paranormal because between 9 and 11 o'clock on that Sunday morning, my front door had been left unlocked.
Yeah.
Now, I live in a nice area. Me as a logical, I'm looking at this from a skeptical point of view, as a logical person. I live in a nice area. It's a Sunday morning. There's literally a church 5 doors up from my house. It's a nice area. But for that to happen on a Sunday morning, I don't understand why somebody would break into your house and do that without stealing anything, or why would they do that in the first place? But yeah, to see that, and for Sadie at the time, who was renting a room there, it was her second night sleeping there. It freaked us both out.
It's one of those things that even if it's not paranormal, it's almost worse. If you think like somebody came into the house and did that while you were asleep upstairs, it's almost worse.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't get my head around. I still can't get my head around that now, because nothing like that has happened since.
Yeah,
it was a one-off sort of scary thing. I've had scary things happen to me, and if you've read the book, there's probably 2 big scary things in the book: the knives. And for me, I'm talking about for me personally. There are scary bits for other people in there, but the knives for me were one, and somebody calling my name, sort of calling out from the stairs. While I was laid in bed was just petrifying. But not because I thought it was paranormal, because I genuinely thought someone was in the house. I thought somebody had broken into the house. So it wasn't the first thing, oh, there's a ghost in my house. It was, oh my God, there's somebody on the staircase. They're coming up the stairs and I'm laid in bed. So I need to get up out of bed. I was living on my own at the time. So yeah, that was the other scary bit for me.
So another listener question, did Guinness the dog, great name, by the way, for a dog, did Guinness the dog ever react at other times in the house, or did any other visiting animals pick up on anything?
So Guinness, yes, is involved in that story that I've just told you about with the voice on the stairs. She would follow you about everywhere in the house, and that particular time she went nowhere. She stopped at the top of the stairs. Whatever was downstairs with me, she didn't want to know anything about it.
She's like, you're on your own.
Yeah, I'm not following you down there. But she had a couple of moments in the house where she would go and sort of sniff under doors when you sat in the front room with her, and it's not something she would normally do at home at my mum and dad's, say. Because Guinness was my mum and dad's dog, by the way, so I used to look after her when they went away on holiday. But she was a very clever border collie, and yeah, she'd sniff under doors every now and again, but nothing untoward massively. I've got 2 dogs now that are 7 years old. One of them's actually 8 on Friday, tomorrow. So it's D'Artagnan's birthday tomorrow. But
great name.
So I've got 2 dogs, Charlie and D'Artagnan, and Charlie is very, very clever. D'Artagnan is the opposite of that, and I think he just follows whatever Charlie does. But we've had a few instances, one of which I'm going to write about for the second book because it creeped me out a little bit, where the door at the bottom of the stairs, where I've seen the door handle before, spring-loaded door handle come down. I heard that like somebody had hold of the other side of it, trying to sort of move it, trying to open it. And then the door started like rumbling, like somebody was behind it. And my first thought was, my wife at the time she was actually putting some clothes away upstairs. And I thought she must have come back downstairs and she was sort of behind the door, maybe tidying something up at the bottom of the stairs, and she was pushing against the door. Mm. And I could hear this rumbling for a while, and it went on for far too long for somebody to be tidying up some shoes at the bottom of the stairs. But the dogs got up and went absolutely berserk at the door, which they wouldn't do if my wife was behind it. So I jumped up and thought, what the hell is going on? And opened the door to the bottom of the stairs, and the front door's there, that's locked. There was nothing there. As the dogs went through the door, they just sheepishly walked back off into the front room. And I was stood there looking up into a dark corridor up the stairs thinking, what was that? There's no windows open. I mean, a logical person would straight away say, are there any windows open? Which I did and went round, checked, no windows open. I've got brand new doors and windows. I've renovated the whole house. There's no like air leaks or anything you can imagine to cause any breeze coming through the bottom of the door. And all the doors inside the house are all brand new. So everything's all good. I've got a good joiner, put it that way. So, so yeah, they're all good. They don't just rattle on their own. And there's no way that you can make that sort of squeaking noise of a door handle without somebody exerting pressure on it. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. And I know I'm a logical person. I know that can't happen without somebody pressing it.
And dogs just know. They just know. They know things.
I don't think D'Artagnan does. He's got no idea. He just follows Charlie about and
just give him his credit. All right. Yeah, maybe he does know things. Maybe he's actually the brains of the operation.
He could be.
So what was this is another listener question. What was the strange thing that you captured on CCTV at the end of the book? And can we see it?
Yes, you can. But it was after I'd kind of finished writing the book. So I added this into sort of the notes at the back of the book. I'm going to write about it for the second book. If you can imagine, basically, that first book, it took me 3 years to write it because I work full time. Took me 3 years to write it, got it out there. I've never written before. And I'm glad people have enjoyed it and liked it. It's got really good reviews and all that sort of stuff, which is great. And every penny's gone to this cancer charity for it. That's 18 years worth of me living in the house. I haven't put every story because you'd get fed up of reading about footsteps every chapter.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. So I've only made I think there's 1 or 2 chapters that involve footsteps in there. I've just sort of put down the noteworthy bits that have happened, if you like. But over the past, so I finished this in 2022. So over the past 2 and a bit years, I've had quite a bit happen in the house, but I've been noting down times and dates of everything that's happened. Now, going back to the CCTV piece, yes, I will put those on the social media page as soon as I've written about them, got the book out there. And I want to know people's thoughts on it. It's like basically what happened, I was sat in the house and the Ring doorbell went off as if I've got the motion detection for people's faces. So you have to pay extra to get the facial recognition piece on there. So it'll either say motion detected or there's a person at your front door. And it came up, I think the wording is something like person detected at your front door or something like that. But it went off and said person detected at your front door. I jumped up, looked through the bay window to the left-hand side where the door is, and there's nobody there. But the security light went on and off. It flashed on and off, which normally stays on for about 30 seconds. So that's not connected to the Ring doorbell. It's a completely separate entity, electrical thing outside. So I went outside, looked up at the security light, it came back on, and it stayed on for about 30 seconds. And I thought, that's weird. Why did it just flicker on and go back off? And why did it say there was a person at my front door when there wasn't? So I looked back on the CCTV footage, didn't see anything at first. Then about 10 minutes later, the same thing happened. The security light came on. This time it actually stayed on, but it said person detected at your front door. This was within 10 minutes of each other. And when I look back at the footage and look back in detail and sort of zoomed in a little bit, on the first one, you see like a white, like a smoke, almost like a smoke go past my wife's car, which is parked sort of horizontally bang outside the house. You see it go down the side of the car. And it's just when the Ring doorbell goes off, as if somebody's gone to the front door and then gone back out and walked up past the car. And on the other one, on the 10 minutes later, you almost see, and I think, and I've got other people to look at this, it almost looks like footsteps coming up the path. It's really weird. It's really creepy, but it's because it was raining, it's quite hard to determine what it is. And as a logical person, you've got skeptics out there look at it and say, it's raining, it's not the best camera in the world. It's a Ring doorbell, which to be fair, I think the 4K or HD, whatever they are, they're quite good cameras. But you can see it. And it's not normal. And what ties into it, it's not just the fact that I'm seeing something out there. It's the fact of what happened with the doorbell going off, saying it's recognized a face outside the door. That doesn't happen. I don't have that. The Ring doorbell doesn't do that unless there is somebody outside the front door and it's recognized a face. You'll get motion detected every now and again, but not the facial recognition. But
for the security light to go off at the same time.
Yes.
That's weird.
They're not connected. They're not connected at all. So for that to go off, it's got about a 2 meter radius. So it only does it if you get to the top of the path, because I don't want it going off every time somebody walks past the bottom of the path, if you like. So somebody must have been at the top of the path, but they weren't, unless they were invisible.
Oh, that's giving me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, very weird. But I will post the videos as soon as I've written about it and got it out there.
And I'll put the link to your Facebook page in the description of this episode so that everybody can go and check out all your posts and stuff on the Facebook page. You've sort of half answered the next question, which was, since you've written the book, have you had any more paranormal experiences?
Yeah. Not enough to write a second book yet.
But it's getting there.
But it's getting there. And my thoughts are that I could probably do a book where I give half a book of an update on the house and what's going on. And then the amount of people that have written to me about their haunted houses.
I bet.
Crazy. So I might write about, because some of those are really, really compelling, good stories. And again, with multiple witnesses involved and stuff, which is the big thing for me, because it's all right me coming forward and saying this sort of stuff, but you've read the book. There's stories in there where there's 6 people in the room.
Yeah.
And these guys and ladies they're not the sort of people to lie. I've known them a long time. Yeah, so it's compelling stuff. So I might write about those as well.
And I think it's such a lovely thing for people who are, have experienced a similar thing, to have somewhere to go, oh my God, other people are experiencing this and they're talking about it openly, they're talking about it publicly. That's really important. Yeah.
And there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people have written to me about their paranormal things, and I'll always reply to them because it's a big thing coming out and saying something like that. So I'll always get back to them and have a chat about it.
And do you have any advice for people who think that they are living in a haunted house? You've been living in a haunted house for 20 years now.
Yeah. I think the first thing is always keep a logical head. Look for the logical answer to things. Don't just say, oh, it's haunted, I've heard a noise or something. Always look for the logical answer. Try and find where it's coming from. I mean, I've had electricians and plumbers around to the house during COVID because we had a banging noise and they couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain it. Every time you tried to investigate it, it just stopped. So they were completely kerfuddled and looking at me saying, you must be doing this somehow. I'm like, no, it's not me. Something's happening in the house, but I don't know what it is. So yeah, always look for the logical explanation, and things are going to be scary at times. Even I'm not scared of most of these things, but in the book, there's probably only about 4 stories about me, to be fair, out of the 25 short stories in the book. But 2 of them really scared me. And since I've written the book, there's been probably another 2 things that have, one really creeped me out when I was stood after 2 or 3 days. We call it the week of madness. Let me just explain this bit to you. We don't sort of going round off in a tangent, but we don't normally have things happen all the time. Just to let you know, it's not like something happens every day. It might happen once every couple of months, once every 3 months. But when it does happen, we call it the week of madness. And it'll start off with something quite small, like we might hear a noise or footsteps or something, and it'll always build up to something a bit stronger. Something else happens. And we had a week where we heard it was on a Tuesday, random Tuesday. I woke up 7 o'clock in the morning and heard it sounded like a children's xylophone playing, like a really creepy, like you'd imagine in a horror film, a creepy musical
instrument. Horrendous.
Going off, I know. So to wake up to that 7 o'clock in the morning, I just kind of woke up, thought, what the hell is that? And at first I thought it must be an alarm on my phone or on my wife. So I've got my work phone and my personal phone. So I checked both of those. They weren't on. Went around the other side of the bed, checked my wife's phone. It wasn't coming from there. It was coming from my side of the bed. And I put my ear to the wardrobe in the end, and it was coming from the wardrobe. And it's a closed wardrobe. The only thing that's in there is clothes. And I say it's a shared wardrobe. It's shared with my wife. So there's about 3 things of mine in. The rest is all hers. But I opened the wardrobe in anticipation, thinking, what the hell is this going to be? And as I opened it, I heard a guttural, like, man's cough. And it was a man's cough in my ear. This was about a week after I'd finished the book. So I wish I could have put that in the first book, because it scared the hell out of me.
Oh, that's made my blood go cold.
Well, to be fair, I froze. Like I said, there are going to be frightening. If you live in a haunted house and it's really haunted, there are going to be the odd times when you are frightened, and that frightened me. and to the stage where I froze and I was stood with the wardrobe doors open, just shouting my wife, who I've called Grace in the book, just saying, Grace, just wake up. And I was thinking, I don't want to turn my head. I don't want to turn my head to the left because somebody's just coughed in my ear. So yeah, that was sort of, there was a build up all week, and that was the final thing that happened that week. Thank God.
So do you think there's Mrs. Tompkins in the house?
Yes.
But also something else?
I think there's a man here because the voice I've heard was definitely a man. The cough that I heard was a man. I've recorded when I had a paranormal investigation team come round, and I set up this laptop that I'm on now. I set it up at the top of the stairs, just using the microphone off the laptop. I didn't have a fancy microphone at the time. I didn't know I was going to be doing an audio book and things at the time. So just using the normal microphone off the laptop, and didn't tell anyone it was up here. And we captured footsteps on it, but we also caught a man coughing like a smoker's cough on there, which was massively compelling because we're downstairs. We're in the extension bit of the building as well. We put an extension on the house. So we weren't in the actual house, if you like. And this was upstairs on the other side of the building. It's not a massive house, but it's big enough for you to not be able to hear things from down there. But yeah, that was quite creepy. And I think there's a female and a male here. I've had a medium in the house. He thinks there's a female and a male. I think he eventually said there were 4, but he also said there was a vortex in the house, which I had no idea what he was talking about when he came up with that. But I was really happy when he said it was in the master bedroom.
You were like, great, brilliant.
Yeah, that sounds like a great bit of fun in your bedroom. Yeah, I didn't tell my wife about that one at first until she read it in the book.
She was like, excuse me?
Yeah. But the paranormal investigation team believed that there were 3 people here. One was visiting, and there was a male and a female here, and somebody visiting who had died locally at a tram stop. And there is a tram stop about 150 yards behind my house that way, which you wouldn't see if you're coming to my house.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
So there's a lot going on, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're still there. So all that can happen is more stories come out of this, which I love. And finally, could you tell people, first of all, where to get the book? And secondly, I know we spoke about it a little bit in the beginning, but where the proceeds of this book are actually going to? Yeah,
of course I can. So you can get the book from Amazon. It's available in hardback, paperback, Kindle Unlimited, audiobook. It's available in every format you can find pretty much. So you can get it straight from Audible as well if you want to listen to the audiobook. It is me who has narrated the audiobook. So if you've not enjoyed listening to this, you'll probably not enjoy that. So get the book instead. But the whole thing, I started writing. My mum was diagnosed 6 years ago with a very rare form of breast cancer. And she basically battled it and battled and battled. Mum was a lovely person, and she lost a battle 5 years into that. But for the first 2 years, I was raising money to sort of keep my mind off things and help as best I could. I was raising money for local cancer charities by dog walking, sponsored dog walks. And I'd raised about £3,000, and then I had to go for a leg operation. So my dog walking days were over, and a friend of mine asked me about the latest paranormal goings on in the house. And when I told him the story about the coins, there was another friend of mine sat there who said, you should write about this stuff because it scares me to death, and I'd definitely buy it. People would buy this. It's brilliant. Yeah. So I had a bit of a light bulb moment, started writing, and 3 years later, sadly, my mum passed and she didn't get to read the final part of the book. But I did ask her which charity she'd like all the money to go to. And every penny raised goes to Cavendish Cancer Care, who are a small local charity who basically look after anybody who's suffering with cancer or their family or friends to help with the mental battle of the treatments and diagnosis. They're brilliant. And the £33,000 it's raised so far pays for their full lease for the year and all the utility bills. So it keeps them running for a full year, which is brilliant. So the support's been overwhelming. So thank you to anyone who has bought it so far.
It's an amazing amount of money for a charity like that. Like that's an incredible amount of money. So it's an amazing cause, and the book is great. Like I loved it. I devoured it, and it's really beautifully like sectioned off into incidents. So
Yeah.
you can pick it up, read an incident, go away, digest it, come back, read another incident. It's great. It's really well put together, considering you've never written before.
No, it's my
Really
first,
well put
first
together.
attempt. It took me 3 years, mine, but it's my first attempt.
Yeah, but even still, it takes professional writers longer to write things.
Yeah, I suppose so. You're probably right. But,
And if also, I had numerous listeners have recommended this book to me, have said, have you seen
brilliant.
this? Have you read this yet? And I'd be like, oh, I'll add it to the list. So I eventually got to it. And then I was like, oh, I waited too long.
Well, I love the way you told the
long.
story, to be fair. You should have narrated my book instead of me.
Oh, no, you've got a great voice. You've got a great voice.
It's good.
Definitely.
Very good.
Liam, thank you so much for coming on and
No, thanks
giving
for
up
having
your
me.
time. And I know this is like you've got a real job. And that you've given up kind of an hour of your time of your evening to chat to me about this, and I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. I think any publicity for the book's brilliant as well. So if the people go and find The Lady in the Bay Window, get it bought. It's all for charity, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey there. Looking to level up your shopping experience? Let me introduce you to Amazon Live. If you haven't heard, it's a shoppable video experience where influencers and creators showcase the latest must-haves, all while you shop in real time. And for those who love some celeb gossip, reality stars like Kyle Richards, Lala Kent, and friend of the pod, Paige DeSorbo. On her new show, In Bed with Paige DeSorbo, Paige invites top-tier guests to cozy up in her fluffy bed where they spill secrets, share nighttime routines, and even whip up midnight snacks. Stream and shop new episodes of her series In Bed with Paige DeSorbo every Tuesday at 7 p.m. ET by going to amazon.com/live/Paige_DeSorbo. Or you can watch Amazon Live's new live TV channel on Freevee or Prime Video under the DIY section and shop along on your phone.